This feature, The Future of Housing, is funded by the News Reporting Scheme.
And the Future of Housing delivers sustained in-depth reporting on housing in County Clare to provide clarity, context and accountability. Each week we're examining a different aspect of the housing crisis, from supply and pricing trends to planning permission barriers, social housing allocations, mortgage access and the role of sustainable rural building, answering the key questions. And this week the Corofin Fianna Fáil Councillor and member of the Rural Development SPC, Joe Killeen, along with the Ennis Chamber CEO Margaret O'Brien, are focusing on the relationship between housing costs, employment and rural sustainability. Thanks to both of you for coming in this morning. Joe, I might fire the first question in your direction. I know you've previously said government housing policies have been unsuccessful, and to be fair, your party's been the overuse of that word to some of those policies. Where specifically, though, are they going wrong?
Well, if I might just go back in the history of it, I suppose, just to be precise in it, we're talking about those between 25 and 44 years old. That's the cohort who are now looking for housing. In the year 1990, 68% of that age group had their own houses. In the year 2000, 42% had their own houses. In 2025, 30% of that group have their own houses. So that tells its own story. So the true problems, affordability and availability. On affordability, in 1990, houses cost 3 times the average industrial wage. In 2026, 6 to 8 times the average industrial wage. Availability in housing, in 1995, 30,000 houses built. 2000, 50,000 houses built. 2006, 90,000 houses built. 2011, 5,000 homes built. 2014, 5,000. 2021, 20,000 homes built. 2025, 36,000 homes built.
Okay, so clearly the data, statistics are going in the complete opposite direction from where we'd all want them to go. But what specifically have the government gotten wrong? Rather than improving the situation, the various policies they've pursued, I'm sure many people would argue, have actually exacerbated it.
They've been successful in the supply of housing.
But where have they been unsuccessful?
They've been completely unsuccessful in the supply of housing.
I'd actually say that the real problem came post-crash. It's like everything stopped. And if you look back to those days, and I remember back in those days, I was contributing on property in one of the national newspapers and talking to people involved in construction at the time. They were saying, we're losing all of our tradespeople, they're going abroad, our population will grow again, we can't just stop. And I think Joe's statistics speak to that kind of period of time. I think he quoted some figures there, 2011 and the big drop in construction. So we're fighting a battle because we were behind. We were certainly very behind from that period.
But even, Margaret, you touch on that there, that some people, and you would think the people in charge can foresee or have officials or experts who can tell them what is going to be coming down the tracks if certain policies are or aren't pursued. We all knew the population was going to grow. We all knew what way it was going to go. And as you say, tradespeople going abroad. But it's an issue we've talked about so many times on the show. Trying to attract these people back is difficult because one of the key problems is there's no accommodation for them.
Exactly. And I hate to sound like this is like a double negative now, but we can throw figures around to beat the band and talk about, expected growth population of Ennis by 2040, or 2030 or what is X. So we're looking at maybe over time having a population of 40,000. We haven't got the basic infrastructure right. So in Ennis, the fact that Clare Abbey wastewater treatment is full to capacity and has been for a while, and, we're hearing back it's going to take 3 to 5 years to resolve it. It's not a major issue, but there are problems like this replicated all over Ireland. So we're basically on a waiting list, like so many other towns. You can't build. You can promise 550 houses from Captain Max down to Clarecastle. If there's no wastewater treatment, they can't be built. Just
before I go back to Joe on this, that issue of the wastewater treatment plant in Ennis has been raised many times before on the show. The knock-on effect of that, meaning that it's difficult to build more houses.
Exactly. You
and
can't
therefore
deliver.
The houses that are available, what few are available, the prices rise. So how are rising housing costs in Ennis, Margaret, currently affecting local businesses' ability to attract and retain staff? I'm sure you're hearing from many of them within the chamber.
Hugely. And the thing is, some of those have resorted to buying their own properties. They're buying apartments or they're buying houses that they can basically reconfigure and, get young staff in there sharing rooms sometimes. And that then has a knock-on effect of affecting the market as well in terms of workers looking for houses to buy around Ennis. They're competing now against businesses as well.
Who can bulk buy.
Yeah, they've had to, because they can't keep staff. So everything is out of desperation. It's not like business want to invest in property right now. They don't, because most of them are complaining because their margins are so tight. But they have to if they want to retain their staff. So it's a way of attracting staff and retaining them. It is a fine mess, it has to be said, at the moment. Then I think, what you have is, the developers are telling me they're getting the green light to build in more rural villages. We've been pretty okay in Ennis for delivering on social housing. I think the council has done a good job there. They're certainly at the beginning, they were one of 3 councils that met their targets in the last development plan. So they're developing there, and I'm very grateful that within the town itself that, they're buying what used to be the super pubs that aren't being used anymore and converting them into, attractive living accommodation. But what's not happening at the moment is that there is not housing out there for people working in the private sector. So I looked at daft.ie for coming in here today, 36 properties in Ennis. A lot of those were apartments. So you have apartment semi-Ds and you have standalone houses. But you also within that have a number of properties that I sort of describe as the probate properties, the properties that have been left that need a lot of work doing to them. They're not attractive to some people, because they feel it's a bottomless pit. They don't quite know what they're getting into. Yeah. So I think for younger people taking on a long time mortgage, what they find attractive are what they understand, a good semi-D house or a good detached house. They're not there. You've got an issue then with planning. It's very cheap to object to planning. It's a cheap day in court for the person who's objecting. It's a dear day in court for the person who's defending. I mean, you've had Glenveigh waiting for ages to build the 300 houses that they're delivering up at the golf links, up towards the golf links road. So, and thankfully they are not dependent on the wastewater treatment in Clare Abbey. I mean, if you look at the geography of Ennis, you think they might, but they're not. Their allocations at Clon Road, so they can go ahead. So we need to look at, within the current plan, where are the houses? Maybe there's houses, that need to be stepped up and need to be moved on and brought into to the market now. Okay,
just to bring you back in, Joe, I mean, what's the situation rurally? Are you seeing workers being priced out of living near their jobs? What impact does that then have on rural sustainability in County Clare?
Yeah, I think in rural Ireland we have a situation where farmer sons and farmers' daughters having difficulty getting planning permission because of national regulation. The regulations around environmental issues. We have too much water or too little water. We have wastewater treatment difficulties in 52 villages throughout the county, and a difficulty then getting planning permission because of this situation. And what we've got then is we've got a rural depopulation in parts of West Clare, parts of North Clare and other parts of the county, which has a knock-on effect on the life in those rural areas. We have GAA clubs amalgamating with neighbouring clubs to try and put forward teams. Schools are struggling to hold the numbers and to hold the number of teachers and hold the resources that they have at the moment. And just a general difficulty for people staying in their own areas. So a lot of the people in North Clare and West Clare have, I suppose, come to the conclusion that securing a house is going to take more income than they have at the moment. A lot have chosen to emigrate. Lots have gone to Dubai, gone to Australia, gone to Canada. Will hopefully come back to Ireland when they have gathered up the necessary resources and will come back to stay with us.
But do you have local employers raising concerns with you about staff struggling to find accommodation? And what kind of slightly positive response can you give them?
I suppose we could go to all the positives, really. I know we've looked at all the negatives now. The negative is the lack of availability because of past policy and failure to build those houses. At the present, there's a huge push on through Clare County Council, but through national government as well, to increase the number of houses available. So we have a number of schemes that are being pushed forward at the moment, and a huge amount of money is being made available nationally to try and improve the situation. So there is 12.2 billion for wastewater services. Now we need some of that in this county because we're still waiting for Broadford and Corofin, who were prioritised 2 years ago, to receive wastewater treatment system. They're still waiting for it, although we've had upgrades in Bellyvaughan, Kilfenor and Tubber. So efforts have been made to try and improve the situation, but further efforts are needed. We have the Housing Activation Office then has been upgraded €1 billion towards housing activation. We have a housing activation unit within Clare County Council, which is of significant benefit because it looks at the situation in the local area, see where land can be zoned and developed, speak to the developers speak to the landowners and try and get that land developed. Just before Christmas, we had a system where landowners were afforded the opportunity to put forward their own land for development. It was an opt-in situation. It's being looked at now by the Clare County Council. Those lands will be for public, in the public domain very soon. Developers will see where those lands are. In the past, land was zoned without the knowledge of the landowners. So in lots of cases, the landowners never had any intention of having that land developed. Now, in the opt-in situation, if land is going forward for zoning, it's at the wish of the landowner, and there's a greater prospect of having that land developed and having more housing developed within the County Clare.
Margaret, what kind of role, if any, should employers and business groups play in addressing housing affordability, if any?
Well, I suppose in terms of like the bigger issue around what's happening or why have we arrived at the situation, and as a chamber this year, together with our developer members, we invested in an independent report which was carried out by People in Place, which looked at the zoning in Ennis as pertained in the current local development plan. So there were a number of recommendations from that, and I have to say that we enjoyed great collaborative response from Clare County Council. We had great meetings and they were really open, and we met all the key planners. Gordon Daly led the team for the meeting, and we met all of that team that are going to join and start this activation programme. So, for example, a key issue that came out of our report was to maybe look at some of the land that's currently designated strategic reserve within that plan, because some of that can be brought forward and needs to be, by virtue of the fact that maybe it's aligned with Clon Road wastewater treatment plant. We have to start looking at what's there already, what can be moved up or good, rather than wait longer term. We know that there are 550 units designated in the area that would feed into Clare Abbey. That's not going to happen in the near future. So we need to move on and just see what can happen, what's possible, and what can we push on at the moment.
Are you happy to see the changes or the variations to the county development plan that, you know, obviously
yes,
it potentially addresses some of the more controversial projects, which we certainly know some people are exercised about, but I suppose it opens up another possible avenue through which we could see more housing in the town.
And we need that sort of discussion, and we need to move things forward. So, you know, anything that, you know, broadens the discussion and invites input, we're really open to.
Joe, from your perspective, from a more rural perspective, are there any practical initiatives the council could introduce to link housing with local employment?
I suppose one of the initiatives that has had a significant effect is the vacant property refurbishment grant. As you pass through rural Clare and rural counties in the west of Ireland, you see a number of properties that were once lived in, were a home for families, for generations, and are left vacant. This vacant property refurbishment grant has brought 513 properties back into use to date. It has encouraged property owners to seek the help grant aid to try and redevelop those houses. They have to be made available for rent or for occupation. So I think it's a fantastic initiative. As well as that, on the derelict properties side, 354 properties have been identified as in a derelict state. They need to be brought back into use. It's a step in the right direction, and owners are being encouraged to cooperate with Clare County Council to do up those properties, bring them back into use, and try and provide, if at all possible, housing for those who are looking for housing within the county. And some of those then, if there's too much inactivity, then the derelict sites register is the next step. So there has to be a carrot and stick approach. The use of the derelict houses is bringing people back into rural areas, strengthening the communities. Hopefully people will settle down there, have their families, support the communities. We saw it in Corofin when we had the Loughtaguna development, about 90 houses. Corofin was a pretty big village even at the time. It was a huge bonus, a huge benefit to the village, huge benefit to the GA, huge benefit to all the different organisations within the community. The show, the drama, tidy towns, everybody gained from that. The shops gained from the footfall. It just brought new life back into the village, and I can see if we can get the land developed in the zoned areas, we can bring the footfall back into those villages. I'm thinking of Rowan. It's one of those areas that has difficulty getting wastewater treatment. A new proposal was that the developer-led wastewater treatment systems would be, well, the process around those and the criteria around those would be agreed with the government, the EPA and Irish Water. That was mooted before Christmas. Long before Christmas, still hasn't taken place. The guidelines still aren't there. And Rowan is one of those villages where a developer-led wastewater treatment system would give an opportunity for some development. The wastewater treatment system that's there is close to capacity, so housing is just stagnating there. No opportunity to build houses. A very vibrant community, a shop, GA, Tidy Towns Group, all those local community groups looking for people to come back, even the schools, looking for people to come back and live in that area and add new life and vibrancy to that community.
Margaret, what practical changes do you think would make the biggest difference in ensuring Ennis remains an affordable place to live and work, or something approaching an affordable place to live and work?
Yeah, just picking up on Joe's point there about vacant and derelict properties, I think we could do more on that front in Ennis. There are a lot of them dotted around the place. I know lots of people have put forward ideas around even houses where, the owners might be in long-term care. Is there something that can be done there to just address the issue of the fair deal so they don't lose out, but get that property on the market sooner? Is there something we can do with that?
I wondered, sorry to cut across you, from an urban perspective, and touching on a point that was raised in a recent edition of The Future of Housing with Eugene Phillips, talking about being able to downsize, but downsize to appropriate accommodation, and accommodation that is near the kind of facilities and services that older members of the community need. Would that help in Ennis?
I think that's a huge issue, and we hear that all the time. People who are living on the fringes of town, who maybe have a detached house, half an acre or whatever, who would really like to come into Ennis. Right now, any of the developments that were going ahead and were pitched as downsizing apartments, they've flipped and become social housing. So, we've met our quota, I think, in Ennis in social housing. The focus really needs to be on something like that, because, a younger family will live in Rosslevin or out the Dura Road or something, and they'll be happy to do that and maybe support the local smaller national schools and then come into Ennis for the secondary. But you've hit the nail on the head, because the apartments that do come up in Ennis at the moment, there's a lot of work to be done on them. They weren't built really as apartments where people would downsize to or live in long term.
And are they near the local GP service or local shops?
They're out of town. They're on the Lynch Road. They're down the Dora Road. They're not in the town centre. The ones in the town centre have been snapped up and are being snapped up by the council. So I think that we need to look at something bespoke that might be built there.
Okay.
And even right here beside us, with the 2040 site, that's going to be affordable as well when that comes on stream. And I think maybe at some point we've got to look at how can we free up houses for people who are working in the area. And we have that strange anomaly in Ennis as well. A lot of the people who live in Ennis actually commute to Shannon and Limerick for work, or Galway, and they're out on the motorway flowing up and down. So even to bring people who are downsizing, who might have some disposable income, into the town centre to help the footfall, that would be really, I think, a very attractive proposition as well. So that's definitely an area they could look at, Alan.
Just final few moments to you on that, Joe, to finish. Would a better, more considered approach to downsizing help from a rural perspective as well? And you think of some of the big, larger family homes that are still being occupied by old members of the community who might even want to downsize, but just rurally in Clare there isn't somewhere appropriate to move, like in Ennis, that isn't near the kind of things they need, be it shops or health centres or whatever that might be.
I think there have to be a myriad of approaches, and every approach then adds a little bit to the ingredient. It adds a little bit to the success in trying to solve the difficulty. Of course, that is going to depend on the availability of houses for those who wish to right size. You want to move into your local village, well, then there have to be houses in the local village. If you want the 52 unsold villages, you're not going to have houses in them. You're not going to have an opportunity to downsize in a situation like that. On the rural issue again, obviously it is a really good idea. People could do that, because that's the ideal. People would move in where they would be supported into their own villages, and that is the ideal if the houses are available, and that's something we can look at. Problem with TII, looking forward, TII have put restrictions on housing along primary and tertiary roads in the county. Huge number of farm families who own the land along those roads are not able to get planning permission. Their sons and daughters have to move away. Even shared entrances are frowned upon. The Taoiseach did say that they were overreaching at one stage, but nothing has been done about it. So we do need TII to to look at the situation and try and see can they relax those restrictions, because those roads cover a huge section of North and West Clare. I'd like to see the rural housing guidelines being published, and I would like to see a little bit of relaxation on the restrictions that are causing difficulties at the moment. The backyard and modular units has been mooted for the past 6 months. We've had it discussed lots of times. We're still waiting for the government to agree the criteria around that, and if that were to become available, then obviously it would be an opportunity to move forward.
So a mixture of a lot of different ideas to try and there's no one kind of cure for all ills.
I think that's the only way to do it, and the most recent one I've seen from Clare County Council is the service site idea in Lister, Fianna and Fáil, where a number of sites have been developed on land that's owned by Clare County Council. The sites are sold at a reduced rate. They're bought by people who wish to set up homes, and I'd like to see some of these schemes being ring fenced for those first-time buyers, basically.
Okay.
I think we just need to concentrate on trying to support those first-time buyers, whether it's through tax exemptions, just make things a small little bit easier if they do get into the mortgage situation, that there is support there. And there was support there in the past. I built my own house in the 1980s. There was a €4,000 grant at the time. The house didn't cost anything like it's going to cost at the moment. There was a €4,000 grant at the time for a house that was around 1,000 square feet. 1,300 square feet actually was the upper limit. €4,000 of a grant, £4,000 of a grant at the time. So
okay.
I know there are pros and cons for a situation like that. You could say it might only increase the cost of housing, but I think there's a myriad of small improvements that can be made to try and support in there to try and support these people.
Okay, we do have to leave it there. As always, really interesting discussion and so much more we could get into. My thanks to Margaret O'Brien and Joe Killeen. Thank you for both of you for joining me this morning. Thank you.
This feature, The Future of Housing, is funded by the News Reporting Scheme.